sorry, we can start from there. So here we are trying to create an endpoint for posting or creating accountants. So it's a post, as you can see, app.post. Endpoint is stroke accountant stroke create. But we are saying that if you're trying to create an accountant is going to be having information like first name, last name, maybe their ID. So that's why we have the request object, and then we can also have response in case we want to get the response. Then I was talking about how do we get the body. You say request.body. Yeah, that's how we get the body from a post, and we are naming our variable or our identifier that is used to hold the body, the data from the body, as payload. But we are saying it's a constant. When you say it's a constant and then you do this, it's wrong, because it's a constant but you're declaring it to to again another value. It should not happen. A constant, that means will not change. If you have a value that you want to change later, then you use what we call let. Yeah, so let is another keyword that is used in declaring identifiers. For let, the value can change, but once you say constant, then the value is going to you cannot change it. So in this case, we shall be able to get a payload for the accountant, and maybe we can log or we can print the payload that will be supplied from Postman. Then here we put the payload. So now if we come to Postman and then we try to create this endpoint, remember you create a collection, then you right click and then you add request. So in this case, the request is we are creating an accountant. So create accountant, and so it's a post. It's a post. Last time out, that's why I've changed it to a post. It's not a get, but it's a post, because when you look at this is a post. Now if you come here, we said you put a variable of your API. I showed you how to configure a variable, so that it's global. You don't, if you ever want to change, you can easily change. So we said it's a SQL API, then it is stroke accountants stroke create. Yeah, now if we post this, they're saying it's not there. We've not started the application again. So you start the application. Of course, we configure the custom command for starting the application, which is local. If we want to use nodemon, I showed you why we need nodemon last time. We said nodemon is used when you have when you make code changes and you don't want to keep starting your application, use nodemon. So we shall run our command, which is npm run local, that uses nodemon to start our application, which is basically in index.js. So when you start, the application starts at this endpoint. It shows the API service is listening on port 3007, and then when you run, of course, now you realize that payload is empty. Yeah, you can see payload, it is empty. It's an empty payload because we've not configured in the body section. So if you come to the body section, then if you cancel this request, you come to the body. You can come to even the form data. Maybe put ID as maybe 100. Then you submit. If you submit, actually you just need to use just come to X form URL encoded, put 100, maybe put like 303 as the ID, and then you post. Yeah, once you post that, now you realize that on our keyboard we have payload. I hope you can see payload ID, which is 3003. Yeah, so you can see that. If we add other parameters, maybe like name of the accountant, maybe Aine Babazi Derek, and then we can also add qualification. You can add whatever parameters you want to store for accountant, maybe they have, you know, bachelor's in accounting. So if we post this, if we send this request and then we come and check, you can see our payload here. ID 3003, name I number was Derek, qualification bachelor's in accounting. So we can decide to send back the response back. So you remember we use response, which is the object here. Then we send. We can send whatever we want to send. We can say maybe API accountant information. You can see accountant information posted successfully as the message once it is received. Very well. So if now we click here, we should get a response that accountant information posted successfully. You can see the message. Or else we can send like JSON, where with JSON, you remember it starts with these curly brackets, and we say status code. You know HTTP codes. I didn't give you an assignment to look at HTTP codes. If it is a 200, it is successful. Then we say message, then we put this message here. So in HTTP we have different status codes. You would have to check. You do that research. I've given you that assignment. There is a 200, which means it's successful. Then a 404, which is not found. There are quite many. You go and find out that information. So in this case, I'm saying that, okay, if we receive this payload successfully, we are sending a message back that status code is 200, which means that the request that we've posted is successful. And then the message is that accountant information posted successfully. Now this will be important when you will configure eventually a database. When you configure database eventually, you will need to post this accountant information that we are receiving here as payload in a database. And when their information is stored successfully in the database, you need to send a message back that accountant information posted successfully. Yeah, so that you receive that message. Actually, let me see if I can do I really need, okay, let me open these two so that I show you the significance of that message. For example, I will open this. I don't know if my applications are still running well. I messed up something. Let me see. So eventually you build the complex product like this. For now we are on the amateur level, yeah? But eventually you have this microservice, this back end in microservice. You have different services, admin, you have gateway, you have orders, but it's one application, yeah. So you realize that we haven't even seen how you configure all these, the interfaces, the middleware, but you eventually be there. Yeah, so that's where I want you to head. We are remaining with 17 days in this month. I hope before the end of this month we push. We see even how you can connect to a database. So let me see if we can quickly start this npm run dev. So now you can know how to, if I say npm run dev, you know how to configure those commands, because I taught you how to. Then run dev, this one. So I believe this works well. If I didn't, I could have messed up something. I believe so. So if that's true, then whatever I want to show you might not be successful. Yeah, so I messed up something. I need to configure something, so it's might not going to be possible. Okay, that's cool. Let me stop this. But anyway, I'll show you in the long run. So, but basically my point was that when you save accountant information in the database, the API needs to send a response back to show that whether the accountant information has been saved successfully or not. If it has not been saved successfully, then you have to also configure a meaningful response to say accountant has not been created, you know, so that a user can take an appropriate action. So if now I save this, you can see that now we have status code as 200, which means that the request is successful and the message is accountant information posted successfully. So that's how basically the API should work with a post. So of course last time even I showed you how to do with JSON, but of course I hope you remember. If for JSON you have to come to row, then here you choose JSON, and then you here within you configure your JSON, yeah, basically, which is start with this, then you put ID maybe with 3004 305, and maybe name is maybe Frank. These have to be in the double quotes. Since this one is a number, we can literally remove this, so we can say Frank Mwesje, and we can say qualification is maybe masters in accounting. So of course you don't forget this, and then you put this one. So if now we post this, we should receive the information for Frank Mwesgwa. You can see Frank Mwesje, you have 3005 Frank Mwesje, and then in accounting. I hope you can see this, yeah. So that's it basically. So here we've used JSON, but when you come to body, to XW, we are using the form URL encoded, we are using Derek. But when you go to JSON, we are using who? Frank Mwesje, yeah. But if we enable back form URL encoded, we are going to go back to Derek. So if I submit, you realize that we now have Derek as the payload, right? So that's basically how a post works. Now today I want us to look at a put. So we finished looking at a get, a post. So today I just want to look at, I want us to look at a put, which we said is used to update a resource in the database. Let's say you've posted accountant information in database, but now you want to update their details. So the right HTTP method that you use in this case is a put. Yeah, is a put. But now a put measure, there's a difference between, I told you there's also a patch, but a put is when you want to update like the entire resource, but a patch is used normally when you want to update part of the information, yeah, part of the information. Let's say you have ID, name, qualification, but you only want to update only qualification, yeah. So it's right that there you use a patch. But if let's say you want to update even the ID, even the name and the qualification, the entire resource or the entire information of the accountant, then there you use a what? A put. But in most cases people use a put, yeah. You will rarely see people use a patch, but that's the difference. So you can always apply where applicable. So we shall say we can say now accountants. Then the difference with then of the callback, please, which you have a then and the response. So now with a put, you have to specify their ID, because remember you want to update a given you want to update a specific resource. Let's say you want to update Titus information in Isbat University portal. What do they use? They must use his student ID. He has a specific number that uniquely identifies him from the rest of the students in the entire university. So if you're going to update someone's information or a given resource's information, then you have to use that a specific ID of that resource. So you put stroke, and then you put a full colon. Maybe you can put ID if you're going to use ID. Yeah, you use what? Use ID. Yeah, so you put full colon ID. But this will represent a value. He said that actually this full colon shows that this variable will be substituted by a value. Will be substituted by a value. Yeah. So here now we've seen that for a post, If you want to get use body, yeah, for whatever is in the request body. But if you want to get information that is part of the URL, and like it's part of the URL, then there you use what we call parameters. So if you want to get this ID, so you get that as a parameter. It's a parameter, so it's not part of the body, but it's part of the parameter. So you say to get that ID, you can say const ID equals or you can say accountant, even you don't accountant ID. It's not a must that you use. Then you say request dot parameters, then dot ID. Even you can see, even then when I put this, you really see that ID comes up, and when it brings this square, like this square box, it means that it exists. Let's try to change and maybe put like user ID, or accountant ID, and then you come here and say dot. Do you realize that changes from ID to accountant ID? Whenever it brings that box, it means that that parameter exists. So that's why the box now is accountant ID, because it's already seeing here that we have this parameter accountant ID. Yeah, so you can say accountant ID if you want to use, but most cases use just ID. You don't have to use SAID, say ID. Then in this case we can log the ID, then we say accountant ID, then you say accountant ID, right? Then we can maybe send a response dot send we accountant information, accountant with ID. We can say accountant whose ID is the ID that this accountant ID has, or you can say you have sent a request for accountant maybe of ID, that one, right? So now remember, it's a put. Now we come here, we create a new request, then we said a put used in updating, so we say update accountant information, but it's not a get, it's a put. So you can see a put is here, it's a put, and then you put school API, then you put accountants, then remember you have stroke, then full colon this one. So I said that this must be a value. It must be what? A value. So where you have a full colon, then the parameter, it means that it will be substituted by a value. So in this case I will put stroke like 3005, right? So if I send this request, you can see that you have our message that you have sent a request for accountant ID of 300 and what? 5. 300 and what? 5. So this is how you use a put, meaning that in this case I have the ID of the accountant whose information I'm going to update. Even when you see on the console we have accountant 3005. So if we want, we can send this one as JSON. We make it a message here. We do this. So if we make it JSON and then we send, whereas now it's a message saying that you have sent a request. So if you change, let's say, the ID to 3010, then the of course the ID has to change. I can see now it's 310, meaning that we are going to update accountant whose ID is 310. But it's not a must that you must use an ID. You can use something else. Maybe if you can be username, yeah, it can be username. So maybe you have, because usernames most times they are unique, maybe you say the username is Drake, yeah. So in this case we are going to get what, Drake as the ID, yeah. So it depends on what you're going to what you use as your ID, or what you are using as your ID to update a resource. But most times you find that we are using the numbers, which are basically the primary keys in the database. Now you realize that now we got the ID, but what about the new information that we want to update? Because in this case we've gotten the ID of the accountant that we want to whose information we want to update. But what about the information, their information that we want to update? So then you come to body. You can use either JSON or body, formal encoded, and now you put maybe name. The name last time it was Derek, but maybe we want to say the new name is he has changed his name and now he's calling himself Drake, you know. Yeah. So we are going to change the name previously, which was a name was Derek, maybe to a name was Drake. Maybe qualification last time I think it was bachelor's, maybe now he has masters in finance, yeah. So at this point, how do we get the body, all that information? That is now the body. So it's constant data equals request dot body, just like we saw in a Postman. And here maybe you can say console.log, then we say data is data, or we can send data as part of the response back. So we say data, then we say data, which is this. Or it's not a must you can say payload, then you change this payload, and then here you say data, and then you say payload. So I have used payload so that you don't cram that you must use data anywhere, everywhere, you know. So literally it's basically you know, it's basically that, you know. So if now we post this, we will receive the new name that we are posting and the new qualification of accountant whose ID is this. So the moment if we had connected with database and then we send this request, we would update accountant whose ID is 3005. We update their name to Anena as Drake and the qualification to masters in what? In finance. So if you send this response, you can see that you have sent a request for accountant of ID this, and you can see data name Anena as Drake and qualification masters in finance. Hey, at our post a word first confirm if you guys have gotten that. Any questions? Dave says
my question is like, for example, when I'm just updating, like I was doing HEC, I want those both the courses to reflect like HEC, then bachelor's in science, computer science. Can it show too?
What do you mean? Like you want to do?
I mean, in the case of, for example, so when it comes to databases, for example, an employee, where an employee, yes, he has been working with a certain, maybe is a midwife. A midwife is a certificate. Then he acquires a what? A diploma or a degree.
Yes.
You can't keep the two, or you have to keep you update to the current one.
You can actually have two. In database you can store your information in JSON, or you use like foreign keys. So here you can post like different qualifications. Let's say you can say qualifications, and then it means it is an array, right? It's an array of what? Qualifications. They have a certificate. Let me write it here. It can be something like this. It's an array saying qualifications, and it's an array. First they have certificate, maybe in HEC. Then next they have bachelor's in finance, right? Next maybe they have master's in accounting. These are three qualifications. So if there are three, you just have to use the key that you're using, qualifications. Then it's an array. The first is index 0, so you remember, so you an array, its first index is 0, we all know that. So you come and put square bracket, and then you put the first one is certificate in HEC. Then you add another one which is qualifications, then you put 1, and the one in the next position is bachelor's in finance, and then qualifications 2, which is the third one, is master's in accounting. So when you come and put this, so you've catered for qualifications, not just one, but as many as you have. So in this case, you use an array, and an array, you use the square brackets, then you put the index. The first index of an array is 0, which means the first element in an array has index 0. So if we post this, you can see qualifications, it's an array, right? Certificate in HEC, bachelor's in finance, master's in accounting. So databases can store arrays, can store JSON, and so at that point you can get qualifications. Even if we come here and we get qualifications, how do we get qualifications? So you can say qualifications equals, you already have the body, because qualifications are part of the body, which is now payload. So you can say payload dot qualifications. So in this case, you can come here, you say console dot log, then you put qualifications here. So if you come to the terminal and then we run our endpoint again, so you realize that we shall have these qualifications. You can see them here: certificate in HEC, bachelor's in finance. Then so you can store this we shall look at database how you can store an array. Or if you don't want, you can create a specific table that has the user ID and the column for qualification, so that it adds 3 rows, but each qualification has a user ID. So we shall look at all those. Have you understood, Titus?
Yes, I've got you properly.
Yeah, actually that was a good question, by the way, because it has now opened your eyes on how you can post an array. What if I have an array of values? So that's basically how you store arrays. Any question? Any other question? Derek, we are good. Frank, we are good. Deus, are we good?
Yes, good.
Frank, you okay? Okay. Now let's look at the last one, which is a delete. A delete is like you're deleting a record from database. Yes, Derek, please go on. A patch is the same thing as a put. The difference is, so you just come here. I've just copied the entire method, and I'm just going to change this to a patch, right? So the moment you change to a patch, literally you're going to, it is the same configuration like a put. So I'm just going to duplicate this. How do you duplicate an endpoint? Once you've already created, you right click and then you click duplicate. So it copies each and everything, whatever is in the body, whatever is in the, so you realize that if you click on this, the endpoint, even I think the body is not copied. In this case we have to repeat the body, so we can say update info using patch. So all you have to change is here on the HTTP method, you change it to a patch, and then here you can put maybe name, maybe devs queue, then maybe qualification 1, maybe has bachelor's in computer science, then you have qualification 2, which is maybe masters in AI and ML, machine learning. So now we've created our patch. Maybe you can change the ID, maybe to the ID to 308. Yeah, so in this case, what is going to be hit and this endpoint, it is not this, even though they have the same contents, but it is this, because it's a patch. So we can say, you can say using, we can change this using a patch method. You have sent a request for accountant of ID, that one. So now if we post this, you can see the response that we've gotten, that using a patch method you have sent a request of accountant 3008, which is this one, and then name devs queue, which is this one, the name here, and qualifications we have bachelor's in computer science and then masters in AI and ML. Understood? Derek, have you understood that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's finally look at a delete. Deleting, you're removing a record from database. So to create a delete, you remember when you're deleting, you're removing a specific resource, which means that when you're creating the endpoint, you have to also use the convention used by the patch or a put, where you use the ID of this type, full : ID, where this one is represented by a value. So we can say app.delete, and then you put this, you put maybe accountants, then you put their ID, then you put a callback, which is a function, and then you put request, then you put response, and then so in this case we can get the ID, so constant ID of the accountant, which is request dot parameters. Remember, when you're getting this, it is parameters. When you're getting body, it is when you're getting body, it is dot body, then dot ID, right? So you can say, we can send back the response, or we console dot log, you are removing accountant of ID, then what ID? It is this ID. Maybe you can send back the response. We say response dot send, and we send a message. Actually, what we can do is we make this one a message. We say constant message, and then we make this one message. We console.log message, and then here we say message. You can just leave it like that. So you say response dot send, then you send back the response. So now if you come, of course, you right click, create a new add request, and in this case it is a delete. It's a delete, so we can rename this. We say delete accountant, right? And then we change this to a delete, right? It's a delete. So we put our school API, which is our variable for our host, for the host name for the API, and then we are saying accountants, then stroke, we put the ID, maybe it is 11200, right? And so if we send this request, you can say that you're removing accountant of this ID. Yeah, so if we had connected to a database, you would have created the query delete from accountants where ID is this ID that you've captured. Yeah, so that's basically the delete as well. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Now let's finish with this. So today we've looked at, done a recap on post, we've looked at a put, we've looked at a patch, we've looked at a delete. We are going to do a recap on get, but in this case it will be a bit different. Okay, let's first do a recap on get. For a get, we said you say app.get. We had not created one for accountants, so you can say stroke accountants to get accountants. Then you write a callback, which is function, and maybe you have request and then response, but we want to send a response of accountants. Maybe it's an array of accountants, so we can say accountants. We can say it's an array of JSON. You can create an array of JSON, yeah. Maybe IDs 20 to 100, name, Derek, qualification. Maybe now we can use one, bachelor's in accounting. Then you add another accountant ID 101. We put name, we say Frank. Then you put qualification, maybe has bachelor's in finance. You can add the last one. You can add as many as you want. Let me stop at this one. 10002 name, maybe you can say Deus. Then qualification, maybe you can say bachelor's in statistics. So this is an array. An array starts with the square bracket, then inside you have JSON. Basically each JSON represents an accountant. Then we can send back these accountants. So we can say response.send, we send our accountants. So literally here, instead of getting the hard coding these values, you'll be getting them from database. You say select all from accountants, and then it will return all those accountants from the database as an array. Where you have like ID, name, qualification. Now these are columns or fields in your table called accountants in a database. I hope I'm clear there. Of course, that's where we are heading to. Right now, we are hard coding data, but we shall be looking at the actual data. So we can create an endpoint here for getting accountants. So we can add request. Then here we put get accountants. Right, so if you use a get, you have a school API, then stroke accountants. Yeah, so it's a get. Remember, it's for getting users. So if you send, you realize that we have what? Accountants, an array. Now you can iterate through these accountants and display them as in a table in your HTML or whatever framework you're using. Because it's an array, so you can iterate through this JSON and display the ID, the name, the qualification. You have for Derek, you have his qualification, you have ID, you have his qualification as well. Deus as well. So then the last one I wanted to show you is a query. if you have a get, you can supply parameters in a query. We've looked at parameters, how you can say you can get parameters and also from a body. What about if you say, you've ever seen like a question mark and then maybe put id equals 100? Yeah, so now you, and maybe, and you've seen these URLs, how you concatenate. This is like concatenating parameters in a URL. So you have, and when you add them, you call them actual query parameters. You can see when I put id equals 100, it automatically puts itself here. If I add another one, and maybe name equals Derek, you can see it automatically puts itself as a column here. So how do we get these values from the query? In this case, they are query parameters. So there you use an object on a request called query. So here you can say constant, you can say query parameters, then you say request dot. In this case, it is not parameters, but it is query, because they are in a query, in a URL. So we can log these query parameters. So we can say query parameters, and then we put, we log them. Then here, if you want to send them back, you can say this one accountants, then you send back query parameters. So you would literally use these query parameters to filter. If you want to filter accountant whose ID is this one, then you can supply it like that. So if I do this now, you realize that now we have query parameters. ID 100, name Derek, because it's what we supplied in here. 100 and Derek. Even when you will check our console, we have 100, ID 100, name Derek. So that's how you get query. So assume you wanted to get accountants, maybe whose ID match that the ID that you've supplied, or the name, then you would do that. It's not a must. If you want to remove the name, you just click here and it will go. You only remain with 100. So if we supply this, realize that now we only have 100 because we removed what? Derek. But you can uncheck, you can check again to have the name. If you do this, you again have Derek. You have Derek again. But if you remove, just click here and it will be removed automatically from the query. And then you have only 100. I can't go past this. I believe this, if we go past this, you guys will get lost. So I want you to really capture this, basically what we've looked at. So I invite any questions before we finish off or we close off. Any questions? Titus, any question?
Sir, there is no much questions.
Frank, are you okay? Derek Deus?
Me, I'm fine.
Derek?
I'm good to go.
Okay, so let's stop our lecture from here. I'm going to share the recording. Please practice before our next lecture. Make sure you have this. At this point, you can now say you know how to build some API for now. But since if you haven't connected with a database, don't brag so much because there is a lot to learn. Probably in our next lecture we will see how we restructure our code. Now we've been building everything in one file, but that's not how things should be. So next time, that's what we shall look at. How do we restructure our API to look like someone who is a pro, not putting everything in one file. Yeah, so that's basically what we look at. Then after that, we shall upgrade, to databases, etc. And remember, I have a project I told you guys we have to work on. It's a project for a client. Yeah, I'm quite busy, but I wanted to give it to you. The client is not putting me on pressure, but I believe you guys can use this opportunity and develop your skills working on a project-based, kind of work. But the prerequisite is to make sure I equip you with the necessary skills for you to start on that project. And that's why we are starting with the API. Probably by the end of this month, I want us to be done with API. Right now, you're at 40%. The knowledge you have on API. So the moment you reach like 90, I may not give you 100%. In the software, there's no, because the knowledge is out there, it keeps on even changing. But what I give you is like 90%, like you know where to start from. So, but when you build on the project I'm going to give you, you will keep on learning new things along my guidance. So once I finish the API, for example, I'll be knowing you guys, I can trust you with building API, and everyone will be having a feature to work on. For example, it's host pivotal. You will have to create the configuration, so someone will be in charge of how do I set up a database. Someone will be in charge of setting up a database. After that, someone will be in charge of creating maybe doctors endpoints. Someone will be in charge of creating patient endpoints. So please practice, so that when I give you that project, you guys are good to go. Like you're not looking amateur or naive. So if there are no questions, please let's stop from here and let's meet in our next session. I will inform you. This week looks quite busy for me. Tomorrow I'm busy, Thursday I'm busy. It's only Friday that I haven't figured out what, but for tomorrow and Thursday, I'm already occupied. So probably, if all goes well, it will be, Friday. If not, then we shall look over the weekend.
So tomorrow are we meeting?
I'm saying no. I said tomorrow and Thursday, I am busy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's either Friday or Saturday. I will inform you.
Okay, sir.
So have a great day. I hope you've learned something. See you on either Friday or Saturday.